Welcome back to a very special broadcast on Newsx. I'm Devika Devan and you're watching the Bharat Progress Report with me. Yes, this year we bring you another set of 101 milestones that India has achieved in 2025. And for the next 25 minutes, I will be discussing some of these milestones in a very important and significant category, not just for today, but for the future as well. We will be talking about the green economy. I have with me on the broadcast Indra Shekhar Singh and Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya. And let me begin with our first point. Dr. Bhattacharya and Mr. Singh, point number 47, sir, on our Bharat Progress Report states India's non-fossil fuel based power generation hit a record 259 gigawatts. Point number 48 says India achieved 50% of the non-fossil fuel power capacity 5 years ahead of its initial target of 2030. When we talk, Dr. Bhattacharya, about a future that is powered basis solar, wind, hydroelectricity and all other sorts of means, what are your dreams and aspirations as far as India is concerned? Firstly, what do you make of these achievements and where do you think we're headed?
For somebody who's living in Delhi, it's a no-brainer that we cannot be using coal-based power and therefore moving into renewable energy is the only way out, because otherwise, forgetting about everything else, we can't breathe air. We need clean air, but for a growing economy like India, we need power, we need energy, and therefore we need alternate sources of energy which are non-polluting. To put the numbers in perspective, when it says 259 gigawatts of renewable power, India requires a total of about 500 gigawatts. So about 50% of today's installed capacity is renewable power. And that's one of the leading ratios in the world. As we move forward, we will need about 800 gigawatts of power in the next 5 years by 2030. And if we continue on the path of not having renewable energy, then Delhi and other northern states will be unlivable. And clearly, that's not the path that India is taking. We are clearly moving towards renewable energy, and not just in terms of solar and hydro, but also in terms of nuclear. So we are getting clean energy from nuclear, and therefore the changes in regulations that have come in, which allows the liabilities of equipment providers to be addressed and to be aligned to the rest of the world, will ensure that large amount of nuclear power coming from small nuclear reactors and nuclear reactors which are attached to steel plants, therefore enabling them to provide steel at a much lower cost and maybe even export them to Europe under their regulatory constraints of CBAM and be aligned to CBAM, therefore having steel which is non-polluting in that sense, is a great leap forward for India. So we are very, very well positioned to have a revolutionary change in our energy mix from almost 90% of energy being coal-based to less than 50% being coal-based.
Okay, Indra Shekhar Singh, I want to bring you in as well. When we say that we've achieved 50% non-fossil fuel power capacity, and that to 5 years ahead of our target, what really is the significance of that?
See, first of all, it's a great milestone that's already been discussed, because we have to showcase to the world what India does now. Many of the countries, especially in the developing world, will do tomorrow and maybe the day after. Because India has been the kind of bloc leader, not just for the subcontinent and for Asia, but also for Africa, for Latin America. And it's historically been seen that India's positions have echoed all across the global south. Wherever the way India has taken, the African nations have followed, Latin America has also, developing nations there have followed, countries like Brazil. We are part of the BRICS agreement. So India definitely, if we can show to the world that it's possible in India, then it means that it's possible anywhere in the world. And I would like to pick up the point from Dr. Bhattacharya and say that, yes, of course, there is a deep need for thorium-based nuclear research also, because India, we know Dr. Bhabha, who is the main pillar like of nuclear research all over the world. And also with China now developing thorium-based reactors, it's about time that we develop our own indigenous capacities and actually get ahead, not just follow the West, but sometimes beat the West in their own game and have new paradigms and new kind of models for sustainability. We've had Vasudev Kutumbakam for generations and for centuries. It's about time that this new India can showcase to the world what does Vasudev Kutumbakam mean in a manifested technology and a sustainable technology kind of way. So I think definitely this is one of the first points, but there is a big leap that we have to cover because of the past of colonization and the British Empire that ruled over us. We have been set back by many, many centuries. We have to move forward and very quickly.
Yes, when we're putting together some of these lists, and of course, it goes way beyond 101 milestones, but I would really like to tell our viewers watching and share it with our guests as well. It's quite heartening when you look back at just 1 year. This is just 1 year that we're talking about, and we've managed to achieve so much. So yes, there is a gap that India really has to pick up the pace, but I think we're really trying our best. And speaking about leaps, Dr. Jaideep Bhattacharya, I want to bring you in on the 49th point in the Bharat Progress Report, where we've learned that EV sales in India have gone up by 15.68% to 2.2 million vehicles sold in 2025. There was a time when it was very difficult to convince people on this electric path, and I know there are still people out there who don't believe that EVs are the future. But the moment we now go onto our roads, Dr. Bhattacharya, you really do see people adopting and adapting to this culture of electric vehicles.
Absolutely, and most of it is actually two-wheeler electric vehicles, and therefore there's a tremendous amount of adoption that is happening. We also need to keep in mind that there was a significant supply chain issue in electric vehicles in this year, where China simply stopped providing a very vital component of electric vehicles, which is rare earth magnets. In fact, to the point that Indra was making, that we need to have thorium-based research. We need to allow the private sector to also start mining of the sand, which leads to 17 very important minerals, including thorium and uranium, and rare earth magnets, rare earth elements, which help in making the magnets, which will help us have a more resilient EV manufacturing future moving forward. And I see that writing in the wall. I'm very, very sure that in the coming year, after passing of the Shanti Bill, which opens up the nuclear sector for the private sector, we'll have the mining of these important sand also opened up to the private sector, which will then lead to a much more resilient secular growth in the EV adoption. And again, as you rightly said, that those who have been skeptical are slowly getting converted, not because of any other reason, but for the fact that there is much more infrastructure for charging that has been set up. So that's the underlying tone to this 2.2 million figure that we're talking about of EVs being adopted. They have been adopted because the charging infrastructure is in place. People are getting faith in the EVs being around, and they have tasted that EVs are a practical and cheap way of moving around. So it's going to be there for a long time.
Okay, Indrashekhar Singh, quickly your thoughts also on electric vehicles in the future. And are you also seeing somewhere a change or a shift in mindset as far as the skepticism vis-a-vis EVs was concerned?
See, absolutely. I would say that, we've already seen historically that when aluminium was introduced or when plastic was introduced, it was a big, great green solution. People do not believe this now, but when plastic came into the world, people thought that deforestation will stop now. Or when aluminum came, people thought that steel will be a thing of the past, and now there's these new, this is the green mineral or the green metal. But time has shown us otherwise. So again, we must also not go deeply in just what we are seeing from the various sources, but do our own research. And the research can only happen when we really see, do we have the infrastructure that includes the production, the mining, the recycling, and the full-scale use of this electrical technology. Now, we've already seen, I'll give you a very small example. We've all seen e-rickshaws now flooding India. Now, in some senses, it's a good thing because the e-rickshaw is not replacing, it's the major means of transportation.
Last mile connectivity in India, yes.
And basically people are adopting it in a very fast way. Better than cars, you have this e-rickshaws, which has now become the local favorite for everybody and also generating a new wave of employment. So in some senses, the e-technology or the EV technology is picking up pace. It's going the right direction, but without containment and without a long-term vision for it, I think we will create another monster. So it's about time. I'm not saying India, the BJP or the Congress, but the Indian state needs to think that EV will become a transformative technology. How are we going to contain it? What is the roadmap for it? I think those questions need to be answered today, because if we delay those answers, where the EV policy will go will be the same as plastic, could be the same as aluminium.
Okay, all right. A pertinent point there is that, of course, that brings us to milestone number 50. Viewers, 53.5 lakh crore houses registered for rooftop solar and 23.3 lakh homes actually got solar. Milestone 51 is that India hit 132.85 gigawatts of solar power capacity in 2025. Dr. Bhattacharya, your thoughts on these two milestones? Yes, we also have the International Solar Alliance now. India really wants to lead the way as far as solar is concerned. But hitting some of these milestones, the fact that 24.3 lakh homes have actually now got solar rooftop installed, what does that truly say about where India is headed?
You know, the point that it's a democratic movement that's happening. It's not a very narrow, focused adoption of solar. Also, the number that you mentioned of 132.85 gigawatts of solar power, that's almost 50% of the total non-fossil fuel generation that we're having. So 50% of the renewable energy is coming from solar, and people are participating in that. Also, do keep in mind that in places like the hills or the deserts and remote areas, there is no other way of generating power but solar. And so people have taken to solar as a fish to water in that sense. And therefore, again, I personally believe that we are going to have an accelerated growth in the coming year. And we have the entire supply chain in place. India is now poised to be one of the few countries which can take sand and convert it into polysilicon, into ingot, into wafer, and into the solar modules that is needed. So we are getting pretty self-contained into this entire supply chain of solar. Again, I'm sure Indra will point out to the polluting aspects of this supply chain. But at the end of the day, we are having a path towards a less polluting energy generation overall, and that's extremely encouraging for India.
Okay, but Dr. Bhattacharya, I also then want to understand from you, when we talk about the numbers essentially tell us the sheer demand, right, for solar right now, and that one can expect that this will only grow with time, the demand for this. So if I'm a young entrepreneur and I'm a young company, or I'm someone in India who really wants to get into this business, what would be your advice to someone watching? How do they then tap into many of the government schemes that have also come out around businesses that are to do with solar power?
One of the aspects of solar energy in the country today in 2025 is that it has become highly competitive. There are many players in this business, and therefore that's why the prices are one of the lowest in the world. Just like in mobile telephony, we have the cheapest mobile rates. In solar, we have got the cheapest rates, one of the cheapest rates in the world. And to match that for new players would be a challenge if they're getting into just the solar energy being deployed, that segment of the business. But the other segments of the business, which is what I mentioned a little while ago, which is making the ingots, making the wafers, making the solar modules, and then supplying it to those who go ahead and install it, because the supply chains have been made really efficient from an Indian industry perspective. In terms of the schemes that India has, which can be leveraged by an entrepreneur, there are a whole bunch of both central government schemes and state government schemes. And in addition, there is a lot of captive power requirement that is out there. So many of the steel plants, for example, would like to have green power so that they can create green hydrogen, which can then be used for steel making. So you can set up these plants in, let's say, a remote area such as Kutch, and then have at a very low to zero cost the power being provided through the grids to the end consumer, which is in this case, as we said, a steel plant or any other plant for that matter. So these are opportunities that are out there which an entrepreneur can use. And personally, I would say focus on the supply chain part of it, which is creating the
Okay.
ingots and wafers and the solar modules.
Okay, all right. That brings us to milestone number 52, viewers. India's total food grain production reached an all-time high of 357.73 million tons. And milestone number 53, India's rice production hit a record 150.18 million tons as well. Indra Shekhar Singh, I want to bring you in on these 2 points of food grain production. Your first thoughts when you hear these milestones?
See, first of all, these milestones have to be taken with extreme kind of, let's just celebratory enthusiasm, because India has been suffering from really 5 years of bad, very bad food inflation. We've had very bad weather and crops. There's been extensive damage to crops, even in major areas like Punjab, in northern India and southern parts of the country. We've had some really unusual cyclones that have hit us. So when we hear that we are coming back and like re-steering our agricultural machinery towards efficient production, especially for cereals, especially for rice, it's very heartwarming, because now we can refill our food reserves. The strategic food reserve, which was actually quite low, we managed to now have enough cereal for that. Food inflation, which was going really bad, now we managed to somehow control that again in this year. So these are, again, very, very good points. And when you talk about the rice production, we all know that how much it rained this year. Like, it was just massive. It was a washout all over the country. And yet the farmers had the good sense of planting rice at the right time. Now, of course, people can say that we are lacking in some of the other vegetables and some of the other major crops, but at least having our rice, a good production of rice with us, having a good production of pulses, having a good production, or at least an increased production of all these other things, will add to our food security. And like you rightly said, we have a record production of rice. Maybe next year we don't need to grow so much rice because we have enough rice already. And so all these are good indicators for Indian agriculture. I would just add that if there was a more sustainable agricultural approach, which is actually what the government has been saying, of having organic agriculture and organically grown produce, I think India would do much, much more if we can achieve that milestone also. But hands down to the farmers, salute to the farmers and to the policymakers for ensuring that we are reaching record capacity levels in rice and other cereals.
Okay, Dr. Bhattacharya, from an economics point of view, sir, as Indra Shekhar Singh also pointed out, and we all know what's been happening in India, especially this year, we saw with the floods, with the rains. How reassuring it is it to learn that India's rice production has hit a record and our food grain production also reached an all-time high?
It's great, but I'll add a word of caution. Some of the growth happened because of ample rain, and some of the rain happened because of climate change. And therefore, that's where the word of caution is, that some of the lands which is producing rice and other food grains may become areas which cannot produce food grains. And some of the areas which are desert as of now will slowly turn into productive lands. And while this transition happens, there will be periods where we may have not enough food grains being grown, and therefore it will be worthwhile to invest significantly on silos where the food grains can be stored for more than 2 years. Right now, our target for food grain storage is 2 years of requirement. We need to push it to at least 4 to 5 years, given that climate change is staring us in the face. And building that infrastructure itself will give a lot of growth to India. So I will take that with a cautionary tone, with a little different aspect. But hats off for what our farmers have achieved in the year 2025.
All right, that brings us to some of our last milestones as far as this segment is concerned. Milestone 54, India achieved 20% ethanol blending. Indra Shekhar Singh, your thoughts?
See, first of all, that's exactly where we wanted to be. We wanted to copy the Brazilian model of having, cutting down on expensive oil, fossil fuel exports from all over the world, and actually have our fields become our oil fields also. And I think it's been a great thing. But what people have been talking about, the engine problem and how the ethanol is not blending well. But overall, I think it's a great step forward. This is one simple way of ensuring that cash income reaches the farmers, and also we can utilize all the residue that's coming out of our agriculture. Now, I'm against a diversion of food grains for ethanol production. That's something that I do not support. But definitely there are other alternatives like sweet sorghum, molasses-based production, and other crops that are growing just for ethanol production. I think that could be the way forward. But converting good rice and good maize and good corn for ethanol production, I think that will not be good for India. So that's my comment there.
Okay, Dr. Bhattacharya.
No, I would completely support what Indra just mentioned. We need to be careful as to what we are pouring into the ethanol creation. But overall, it's a step in the right direction. We need to fine tune it as we move forward, because clearly, instead of sending our hard-earned money to the oil field owners, to the rest of the world, it should go to our own farmers, and that's what we've achieved. And therefore, there's a lot to celebrate about, with the caution that Indra just mentioned.
All right, that brings us to milestone number 55. The first Indian-born cheetah, viewers, gave birth to 5 cheetah cubs, and that was a huge and a very promising milestone as far as our efforts towards protecting the big cats and the forest is concerned. But milestone number 56 is where I end this segment. The central government earned rupees 800 crores from selling scrap. Yes, you heard that right. 800 crores from selling scrap. Dr. Jayji Bhattacharya, some new record perhaps set there. Your thoughts on the same? We've earned 800 crores just from selling scrap this year.
Yeah, just to put that number in perspective, it's more than what was spent in sending Chandrayaan 3. So we kind of got Chandrayaan 3 for free by just selling the scrap. The unsaid part of it is also the fact that we cleaned up the offices, we cleaned up the government. It was part of the Swachhata campaign, and that itself has added value than just the rupee part that came in. So again, a very good step forward, and it helps in getting an uncluttered office and therefore an uncluttered mind from the government perspective. All
right, Indra, I leave the last word with you on this.
See, absolutely. I think we should all, like, whether it's our relatives or in our rituals or in our families, we always do a bit of house cleaning. And if the government managed to make so much profit from it, I think kudos to the government. And I will just end with one small point. We must know where that money went. At least there should be a white paper from all the waste, that the money that we profited, where did that money go? I hope it didn't create more waste. So thank you so much. And yeah, I think the government should come out and actually do more of house cleaning to ensure that the vestiges are actually out of the system and we are a more tighter ship and we move towards our goal in a faster way.
Absolutely. Ultimately, we want there to be less consumerism at some point in our country as well. But on that note, I thank both of our guests for joining us in this very special segment of the Bharat Progress Report. We're coming back with more on the other side. Stay tuned.